Hello, friends. Today I have a story for you about the miracle passport. After we were in Manila for 2 years, a family on our compound, an American family from Texas, who had 2 or 3 boys, decided that they would adopt a Filipina baby girl. And they did. Beautiful little girl. And we realized that it was the girls who needed adoption. In the Philippines, like in much of Asia, when local people adopt, they usually want to have a boy. So we decided that maybe this was the time that God would have us add to our family a Filipina daughter too. And so we began to have the home studies and all of the different things we had to do. The funniest part of it all was our medicals. All 4 of us had to have medical exams to prove that we were healthy and fit to adopt. We went to see the doctor. Our appointment was for 11:30, and we arrived there. Tim, I think, skipped kindergarten that day in order to accomplish this. And we sat in the office waiting, and we waited, and we waited. After half an hour, I walked up to the secretary or the receptionist at the desk and said, we had an appointment for 11:30. Is there a problem? Because there was no one else in the waiting room. We were the only ones. And she said, well, the doctor's busy. Just wait a moment. We'll do something. We'll take care of you. So we waited some more. Not unusual in that culture, so we waited. And about half an hour after that, she came back and said, could you give me your papers, please? And we had filled out as much as we could fill out on the forms that were needed, and we handed them to her. And she disappeared. 10 minutes later, she came back and handed us the papers, all completed, all done. And I said, doesn't the doctor want to see us? And she says, oh no, sir, the doctor knows you. He knows you're all healthy and well. Anyway, he is playing tennis. So she had gone out to the tennis court, had him sign the paper. She filled in all the details, and we had our medicals all completed. There were all kinds of facilities that looked after young women who were pregnant outside of marriage, and one of them was Abierta's House of Friendship. This was a special place because Diane's best friend, Gail Thiessen, did Bible studies among the women in this home. And it was in this home where we got the first telephone call. We decided we're not choosing any babies. We will take the first one that they offer to us. And we got a call. And we went there on a Saturday, and here's a 5-day-old little, cutest little girl. But she didn't open her eyes, and I wondered, what is there a problem? She was sleeping when we were there. And they said, well, we can't do the paperwork on Saturday, so come back on Monday. So Monday we came back when she was 7 days old. And with Tim and Tanya, we took this little baby home to the compound. The kids were just excited. We have pictures of Tanya and Tim carrying this baby all around the compound, showing their friends their new baby sister. And we named her Melinda Maria. Melinda was the name that we chose for her, and Maria was the Filipino form of Diane's mother's middle name. And she had passed away before we went to the Philippines. Well, that was the beginning of an incredible experience. And through the next years, we had engaged a lawyer or a law firm to work on the adoption process. They kept stalling and stalling and stalling until it became a huge problem, which is when the miracle occurred. In 1976, we were scheduled for furlough. We were to go home for a 2-month short furlough. We chose those so the kids could stay in school at Faith Academy, just be home for the summer break. And of course we kept our home and we didn't have to dispose of everything for being away for a full year. It was to occur on May the 1st in 1976. Well, 2 days after Easter, April 20, 1976, we received a telephone call in Manila from London, Ontario. It was a shock because telephone calls in those days we did not make. I don't think in all those years we were there did we ever make a long-distance call. It cost $50 a minute to make a long-distance call from the Philippines to London, Ontario. And so when we got a phone call from there was only 2 phones on the whole compound. And so someone had to run to our home and tell us, come to the telephone office, you have a phone call. We went over, and it was Diane's brother, Spence, her younger brother. And Spence gave Diane the sad news that her dad on Easter Sunday night had had a heart attack during his sleep and peacefully went to be with the Lord. He was a believer, so there was joy in that, but there was sadness in the fact that not only had Diane lost her mom before we went to the Philippines, now at a fairly early age, at 63 years of age, Diane's father had passed away, and on the following Saturday, they would have the funeral in St. Catharines. Now, this was Tuesday morning, our time in Manila. That was Monday night here in London, Ontario. And so we had that much time to get organized. Now, we had already begun packing and whatnot because 2 weeks later we were heading home anyway. So we had, however, a huge problem. The adoption of Melinda had not been finalized, and therefore we were still just legal guardians. We were not her parents legally and officially, and no way would we be able to take her out of the country. We decided that by faith we were going to push ahead. So I phoned the airlines, and for Friday, the end of that week, we booked flights for 5 people, all 5 of us, to fly from Manila to London. Now, the only way we could accomplish that, it was an afternoon flight leaving Manila. It was going to Los Angeles. We would transit through Los Angeles and take the red eye overnight to arrive in Toronto at early morning hours on the Saturday, the day of Diane's father's funeral. We had a backup plan, of course. If it didn't work out that we couldn't take Melinda, then I was going to stay behind and work on that process with her, and Diane would go ahead with Tim and Tanya for her father's funeral. But we were praying and asking God to enable the whole family to go together and then be able to take our 2 months of a short furlough, home leave, and be there for this event. Wednesday, I went to see the elderly missionary on our compound, who was the one who handled all of the official business in the city. He was actually a friend of President Marcos because he did all the news coverage for FEBC radio there at Malacanang Palace, where Marcos lived. And he knew everybody, and everybody knew him. His name was Han Brown. He had been a Christian Missionary Alliance pastor before he came out as a missionary. But he was a very personable guy. And of course, in the Philippines, pakikisama, or good relationships with others, is a high value of the culture. And he fit right into that and did very well. So I told Han Brown, Han, I've got a problem. I have to get a passport for our baby, and I don't know what to do. And he said, well, what processes do you have to accomplish? I said, well, we've got to go to social services and get permission for taking Melinda out of the country. Then we have to go to immigration and get clearances for all of us, because this was martial law era. Even when I traveled for FEBC radio at the time to other countries, monitoring radio signals and gathering staff to come live in Manila with us, I had to have major clearances every time I left the country, and everybody did. even a baby like Melinda. So that was the second step in the process. And the third was foreign affairs, which is where passports were issued in the country. So he says, well, you know, the way that things work in the Philippines is you've got to get to the head man and get his approval. And once you have that, then things move very quickly. But if you don't have that, it moves very slowly. So we've got three major ministers, government, cabinet ministers that we're going to have to go see. And they then have three managers under them who we will then have to work with to accomplish whatever it is they approve. So that means we have to go to 6 offices, and the only day we have is tomorrow. And he says, normally these processes take 1 day for each one. So he said the normal time to accomplish what we need to do is 6 days. He says to do all of these 6 visits in 1 day, which is Thursday, the day we had before our flights were scheduled, to do that is going to take a miracle. He said it has never been done before. He said, however, I am a man of faith. And so together, Han and I prayed, and we asked God to give us favor and to enable us to accomplish something that had never been done before. And then we spent the evening typing up letters to explain to these cabinet ministers why we needed whatever we needed from that office. We had already earlier in the day gone down to the corner photography shop to get passport pictures for Melinda's future passport. On Thursday morning at 7 o'clock, Han and I took off from the compound, heading for Social Services Cabinet Minister's office to be there for 9 o'clock. And it was all we could do through Manila traffic to get there in 2 hours. But by 9 o'clock, we were walking into the office of the Cabinet Minister for Social Services. And would you believe, there he was in his office at his desk. Now, everybody knew Han Brown, so he would just walk up to the receptionist and say, I have an urgent need to talk with the Cabinet Minister, please. And the receptionist would go back in and tell the cabinet minister, and they would usually walk out and say, Han, good to see you, come in, how can I help you? And so we would then share verbally what the challenge was, that my wife's father had passed away, we needed to get home for a funeral, and we had this challenge with our baby not having been finalized in the adoption. Social Services Minister said, that's not a problem, I will sign that. And so he signed the papers to approve that. So now we then had to go to his manager's office, which was in a different building, and we were trusting God that he would be there. Actually, it was a she, it was a lady, and we went to her office at about 10 o'clock, and lo and behold, there she was in the office. And again, willing to see us, willing to talk to us. And the social services had no problem with our taking this child out of the country on the basis that we would finish the adoption in Canada. That was the first step. So we've now accomplished 1/3 of our objective. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and we come to the immigration office, cabinet minister's place, and Han says, this one's going to be a challenge because this guy takes executive lunches. He usually is gone by 11 in the morning, and he never gets back from lunch till 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon. We walked into his office shortly after 11 a.m., and there he was, sitting in his office. And he invited us in, and we explained to him our situation again, and he gave us approval for getting clearances, not only for the 4 of us, which was fairly routine, but now for a baby that we had now got the permission from Social Services to take home. And we went at 12 o'clock to his manager's office. The manager was very, very accommodating. It was lunchtime, and Lunchtime is lunchtime in the Philippines, and offices just shut down. He decided this is really urgent and necessary, and so he asked his staff to stay on through the lunch hour in order to accomplish what we needed. And so at 1 o'clock, we walked out of that office with all of the papers we needed to leave the country. We've now accomplished 2/3 of our objective, and it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we arrive at the office of the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Minister. And Hans says, now, this is a new guy, and I don't know him as well as the others. And he travels a lot. We'll be really lucky if he's in. And we walked into his office, and would you believe, there he sat. And his receptionist, of course, told him we were there. He came out to greet Han, invited us into the office, and he said, I'm supposed to be on a trip today, but yesterday something told me that I just had too much business here to do, and I shouldn't make this trip. So he said, I canceled my trip yesterday. We explained to him. He said, well, we're going to need to have a very detailed letter for the passport office that is under me. And he said, you go out and work with my receptionist to get that finished off, and I'll just talk with Han here for a while. So I went out and worked with the secretary. We got the letter ready for the passport office, and I took the letter into the cabinet minister, and he took his pen and he wrote on it, expedite immediately. That was all we needed. At 3 o'clock the next hour, we were at the passport office. And would you believe the head of the passport office was sitting in his office? And Hans said, this is an absolute miracle. 6 leaders that we have to see in one day, and they're all in their office willing and ready to see us when we arrive. The passport manager said, this is very unusual. We have never issued a passport this quickly in this country before. But because it had the cabinet minister's signature, which said expedite immediately, that's what happened. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I had given them the photographs and whatnot, and we walked out of that office at 5 p.m. with Melinda's Philippine passport in our hand. It was unbelievable miracle. And God had just orchestrated every detail of that in an amazing way. Well, the next morning, we headed off to the U.S. Embassy first thing in the morning because we were going through Los Angeles, and we had to have, therefore, a transit visa for this Filipina baby we were taking with us to go through the USA. Then we went from there to the Canadian Embassy, where very quickly they expedited what they promised, which was a minister's permit in her passport, allowing her to come and live with us in Canada while we processed the adoption there. We arrived in Canada on Saturday morning, the day of the funeral, having flown all night in incredible jet lag. And that morning, my mom and dad met us at the Toronto airport. Melinda, who was just big enough, she was 2.5, and she was very, very talkative by this stage in her life. She had never met her grandmother, my mom, and she said, "Hi, Grandma." And Grandma just put out her arms, and Melinda went to her, and for the rest of that day, I think the whole day, she was in Grandma's arms. We decided to stay home for 1 full year, visit our church's supporters, family and friends, which was a wonderful year for us. And on November the 22nd, 1976, we received the official papers from the judge here in London, Ontario, that Melinda Maria was now Melinda Maria Estabrooks, and an adopted daughter of Paul and Diane. Well, we realized that she had a communication gift, and at DCAS, the radio station I told you about last week, they needed a promo, as we called them, for the Children's Bible Hour program out of Michigan that was on the radio every week. And Melinda did that, and here's what it sounded like.
Hello, friends. Do you want to hear a good program on radio? It's made for us kids. It tells about Jesus. It's the Children's Bible Hour. There's good singing, and Uncle Charlie tells Bible stories. Every Saturday at 9:30 in the morning here on DCAS.
That little gal developed significantly to the point where today she's involved full-time in media communications. And here's what she sounds like now.
Hi, I'm Melinda, and my top 2 passions are these. Number 1, to be a storyteller. I love sharing my story, I love telling my story, and I love hearing other people's stories. That's why I love what I do here at See Hear Love, because I give a platform for people to share their faith stories of courage, love, and hope. So that's number 1. My passion is to be a storyteller. Number 2 is to actually bring people together for a party, to connect, for girls' weekends, to do like a Bible study, to share real life experiences and to learn from one another and to pray together. So maybe it's like a party event planner, but that's one of my second passions. And the reason why I'm excited about being a part of See Hear Love as the host and executive producer is that it marries my 2 passions together. Number 1, this show is all about story, that our stories are connected to His story, God's story, and we couldn't live out our calling and story without Him. And second, at being a storyteller and loving to hear other people's stories, See Hear Love gives an opportunity for people to come, hang out with us on the couch, and share honestly and authentically about what God has done in their lives. So that's why I'm so excited to be a part of See Hear Love.